Welcome to Keep the Hotel Empty. Today we've kept the hotel empty to welcome in a gentleman with over a decade experience as a professional soccer coach, author of Lessons from the Beautiful Game, and the founder of the Sarasota Paradise Soccer Club, Mr. Marcus Walfridson. Marcus, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate being in the hotel.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit empty, but I'm good.
Yeah, well, we keep it empty. That way we got room for you. So I know that you're the founder of the Sarasota Paradise, and that's kind of where we're at the moment. But I want to press rewind all the way back to where you can tell me where this passion and this enthusiasm for soccer in particular comes into your life and how you see it as this community pillar.
Well, I think for me, it all started when I was a kid. I grew up with a single mom, always gravitated to team sports, I think for the father figure kind of thing. And, saw early what team sports does to not only individuals, but also communities, right? So I grew up in northern parts of Sweden, not much to do, especially in the winter. You have snow and no sun for 6 months of the year kind of thing.
And we don't know about that in Florida.
Sometimes I do want to go back, like today.
Right.
No, but I think that's where it all started for me, seeing how that kind of pulled communities together. Like when we play games and you have everyone in the community come out. And then, work my way up through the coaching part of it. Obviously saw it on a bigger scale, top level Norway, top level Sweden.
So when did you start? Did you start playing right away when you were young?
I mean, yeah, everyone in Sweden plays soccer when they're a kid.
Okay, paint me that picture a little bit.
You have, when you're like 5, 6 years old or whatever, there's nothing to do, right? You grew up with nothing to do. And you want to do what all your friends are doing, right? And all your friends are in the team. So your classmates are, they play soccer in the summer, they play, other sports in the winter inside. So that's what you do. And then you kind of figure it out as you go kind of thing.
Okay. So at what point did you start to feel like you wanted to take it more seriously and get into coaching and things? I mean, that's a big jump.
Yeah. So I followed the dream to be a player as long as I humanly could, basically. I got recruited to Norway, played the second division in Norway. And, before that, I actually figured out that I wanted to coach. I had this... I came to a new club, broke my ankle in the first friendly game.
Oh, man.
I was like 20 years old, something. And I got some time to kind of think about life, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't know what to do or what I wanted to do. I just figured out, during this period when I had a cast on my leg, I was like, what do I want to do? I thought about that. And the only thing I kind of thought about, what do I watch? Regardless of how I feel. If I'm tired, if I'm hungover, if I'm, sick, whatever. What do I watch? What do I read about? And it's the game. It's the beautiful game.
Right.
So I figured, well, why not just try to become a coach, right? It doesn't seem to be that hard. At the time, playing at the third level, not great. But I just thought, okay, let me try to become as good as I can be, fulfill my own potential at least, so that I can be, satisfied in a way. My biggest fear in life, I think, is regretting things and regretting to not have done enough.
When did you identify that?
I don't know. I just had this feeling I don't want to look back and say that, hey, I didn't give it another year or I didn't give it my all. Right, I don't want to half-ass it kind of thing, which I'm trying to bring into Paradise. So we're not half-assing things here either. So
amen.
Yeah. So I think that's it. And, just wanted to be as good of a player as I could be, because that way I can also learn more, reach whatever level I could reach. Didn't reach a great level, but I got paid a little bit to play. I tend to joke and say that I got paid more after I stopped playing. So that's how good I was. But, brought me some good experiences. And given that I knew I wanted to coach all the way, it was when the day came when I had my knee injury, I was like, okay, let's start coaching.
So what's the road like between the foot and the knee then? Because you recovered from the foot injury and played a little bit yet?
Yep. So that's where I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to go into coaching eventually, but I want to play for as long as possible.
Gotcha.
Become as good as I can be, and then we'll take it from there.
And then another injury hits?
Yes. So I had a good season in Norway on the second division. This was my second training with a higher level team. So the idea was I was supposed to sign for them. And the second training, my knee blew out. So I was like, okay, I'm done. I was like 27, I think, at the time. And, given that I had the itch to coach, so I'd already taken my,
Right.
I think I'd done my UEFA B license already. No, I did it the year afterwards, or that year. But I knew so many, or I came in contact with so many good coaches that lived in that town. So it became a natural transition. And then, I had to do a comeback every year for like 3-4 years to kind of help save some second team or some lower division team, which was fun. So you don't train, and then all of a sudden you train for like 3 weeks, and then you play a little bit.
Yeah.
Which was fun. But no, it was a good transition.
So what's the beginning of coaching look like?
How do you mean the beginning?
Like, what did you start doing? Who were you? How did you get into coaching? How did you make that transition?
So I've coached teams since I was 18, like in different levels, different types of sports. So it's always been an interest to me. And I think it's a little bit that you mentioned this before we started, like the whole helping people fulfill their dreams. And that's why I started coaching, because I saw one part of it is for sure that you see players and you want to help them become as good as they can be.
Right.
Because that's what I wanted to do, right? And I didn't really feel I had that help maybe. And then the second thing I think is the biggest challenge you have on the planet Earth is to help, like, lead a group of people and get a diverse group of people to head in the same direction. I think that's one of the most difficult things you can do. Obviously, the bigger the group, the more difficult it is. So I think those were 2 reasons why I wanted to coach. I saw the challenge in being a leader and then helping all the individual players actually become better, and helping them reach whatever level they want to do. I think those were 2 things that drove me into coaching.
So where did your career start when you were focused on coaching post-playing? What kind of team were you coaching? What were you doing? How?
I did it all. When I do something, I dive into it.
I'm getting that.
So I started doing, I had the second team for the club that I used to play for. I started a kind of an academy setup for younger kids.
Cool.
I did some scouting for English Premier League team. I did coach education. I did player development, one-on-one kind of things. So overall, I've done every role you can do within coaching. Assistant coach, head coach, goalkeeper coach, worked at a high school. Like I said, scouting, video analysis, you name it, and I've done it.
How important do you find it to be able to pivot like that and do multiple jobs?
Well, I think for me, the thinking behind it was I wanted to be the head coach. Like, I wanted to be a really good head coach at the time.
Gotcha.
So my thinking was I should do every role, because that way I learn about the role. So when I become the boss or the leader, I can ask better questions, right? Because if I've been there and if I've done it, I can ask better questions. I can kind of ask questions about how it actually is, right, on the floor, because I know a little bit. I'm not going to be an expert, but I'll know a little bit at least. I know the problems. I know some of the problems. So it allows you to kind of ask better questions. So that was my thinking about it. And then just kind of, I think it's my way is, but I know a little bit about a lot. I'm not an expert in, I think, anything, but I know, I know a lot about a lot of subjects. So we can have conversation about different subjects, and I think I'll do decently, but I'm probably not going to dive into quantum physics with you.
Right. Has that been something that you purposefully put in as an ethos that you developed personally and professionally, or is that just kind of the guy you are and you've learned to play that to be one of your strengths?
I think it's a huge drawback that because the drawback of this is that I get easily distracted, right? Because you find something that's funny, a new thing. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
So I think in the past, for sure, I've been subject to the disease that's called a new object disease, or whatever it's called, a new fancy object disease. You see something new and you want it, right?
Right.
And in my case, I've been like learning about something new. So I think in the past it's been a problem. I think now, as I've gotten older, I think it's a positive thing that I kind of can hold a conversation about different things. But I wouldn't recommend it. I think it would be easier to be successful if you become an expert in something, I think. I don't know, because it's not.
Yeah, right. It seems like it over there, but
I look at Instagram. It looks super simple.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, no, I don't know. I think you need to follow your heart a little bit, right? I'm just a curious type of person, very curious. wanna dive into things, and I think you should just go with it a little bit. And then, the clue, I think, is to be able to focus when you need to focus, which is a challenge.
Yeah, right. This is the balance of those two things.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about how the coaching career goes for you, because you transition out of that after a little bit of time. Talk to me how that road kind of goes.
Sure. I started coaching in 2008, I think it was. That was the year after my injury. 2011, I quit my day job a little bit too early because the company I worked for went public 3 years later.
Ouch.
Yes, I was employee number 6.
Oh, no.
I went all into coaching, did everything.
This is the not half-assing things.
Exactly. I mean, that's my thinking. If I'm going to be good at this, I need to devote time for it, right? I need to read and study. I need to watch a lot of games, and I need to do a lot of things, right? So I think I had 4 coaching jobs at the same time, right? So literally I had the younger kids, I had my team, I had the coach education stuff, I had the scouting, 5 jobs, and I had a player development thing as well going on. So I had this going on for 3 or 4 years, made it eventually to the top level in Norway, where I, from just luck, got to the top level within the club kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then I think it started to kind of became not a burden, but it became a little bit rough, right? Because I put so much into it that I think I lost myself a little bit in it.
Right.
And I noticed that I started spending so much time on things that were not immediately related to the success of the team, for example. Meaning I spent a lot of time on helping the marketing people. I spent time on helping the salespeople. I spent time on building the organization because that's what I started to find was the fun thing. And that made me stray a little bit from, I think, my actual job, right? And the result of that was something I felt like a burnout, which made me take a break, think about it, went back into a second job or another job, the last job I had, and kind of the same effect, right? I went on for a while, wasn't a good fit, not a cultural fit at all. Ended with me being fired, which is good for a coach because you get paid.
Yeah, right.
But it was also a wake-up call. Like, wait a minute, it feels like I'm burning out, and like, is that a thing, or is it more that I'm not doing what I love?
Right.
I think I reached a level in coaching that, even though it's always difficult to win games, right? That's always a challenge. It's always a challenge to work with people. But it became a little bit easier somehow, like the whole coaching process. So my focus started spreading to all these other things that has no impact on your week to week.
Right.
But it has more long-term impact. And I started to be more focused on that, which is not a good thing if you're the head coach. Definitely not. You should not do that. You should worry about winning the next game because that's, at the end of the day, that's what's keeping you in the job. So I think that was the kind of, we call it was a tier, almost like a different directions kind of thing inside of me. I think that's what ended up being what I felt was a burnout. Because what I'm doing now, I work much more now, right? But I'm doing something I love. I know I love it now, and it doesn't matter. So I don't think burnout is I don't think that is it's not an overworking thing. I think it's when you do something that you're not in love with or that's not in line with your purpose more. I think that's kind of a better way of putting it. Then you burn out, right? If you're doing something you don't like, yes, you'll burn out probably. But if you're doing something every day that you love, or do you see this is what I want to do, this is me, I don't think it's a thing.
Right. Night and day difference there. So let me ask you, when you're coaching and you're getting to the point where you can help sales, you can help marketing, how does the coach become the guy that helps do that? Did you see a need that you could fill, or did they see a need that you could fill?
I think it was a combination. I think more that I saw gaps. Okay, we're doing these things because you hear them talk and like, hey, we're doing this. I'm like, why aren't we doing this?
Right.
and we can do this, and you have that, you can have all these things, and they're like, what? Oh yeah. Oh.
I was going to say that's an interesting position for a coach to get in.
Yeah, and I think they were surprised too, and I think that's when I like, okay, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't be coaching, right? So I thought like maybe I should be a sporting director or something, but then I'm just like, let's just start a team.
So at what point did you write the book after you left coaching?
Yeah. Oh. So I wrote the book as a way of giving back to coaching.
Okay.
Right, because these were the lessons I learned. Doesn't mean it's helpful for everyone, I don't know, but these were the lessons I learned from doing this journey over a decade. And I was like, okay, I don't want to just move on. I want to make sure that I can, provide some value back to the profession, so to speak, and to other coaches, because I think it's important that if you can share knowledge, if you can share your resources, you should, right? I mean, I think we're put on this planet to help people. I think we're put on this planet to make it better, right? And so I think it was natural for me, like, okay, we need to give something back here. Let's put a bow on it.
I was just going to say, does that help kind of close the door and put a bow on it?
Yeah, I think also, from a personal perspective, yes.
Yeah.
For sure. But it was more a way of like, okay, here's something that I saw worked with me. It worked with other coaches I worked with, because I worked with some coaches for a while. And if it works for them, maybe it works for more people. So
right.
Let's put it out there and see what happens.
So was that just kind of the exit strategy, as it were? Or was that going to open a door to more authoring and more coaching of coaches?
Not the plan at all. I actually tried to get a normal job. Turns out no one wanted a washed out coach with no university degree. So
yeah, you probably didn't want that job anyways.
Probably not. But I was so fed up with things for a while. So I was like, what am I going to do, right? And then I realized that, well, there's one thing I've always wanted to do that I haven't done, and that was try to live in this country. Just because since I was a kid, I mean, growing up in Sweden, you grew up with all the American TV, all the movies, of course, and all the culture. I'm a diehard New York Rangers fan.
Nice.
Since I was a kid, so I was very pissed off today, by the way. They were horrible yesterday. Obviously growing up in the northern part of Sweden, hockey's a big thing. And like had an interest for the history of the country, and my personal values are in line with the foundational values of this place. So I always had that dream that I one day want to try to live here and see how it is. So that's where I kind of got to. Like when I got out of coaching, I was like, okay, what to do? Well, I know I want to try to live in the U.S.
And you were in Norway at that point?
I was in Sweden back in Sweden actually then.
Okay.
And I was like, well, how do I get in to the country? Not that easy in 2018.
No.
Seems easier now. But and I was like, well, and what to do kind of thing. Because if you're coaching, I was actually offered a job in 2017 as a scout for an MLS team. Would have still been in Scandinavia, but, that would have gotten me in at least sometimes, and would have been a road into it.
Right.
For some strange reason, I turned it down. Still keep in contact with the guy who offered me the job, though. So, but I kind of, on reflection, I was like, okay, the only realistic way for me to get into the U.S. is through the game, right? And I do think I have something to offer to the game. When I looked at it from the outside, I think there are some gaps again here in professional soccer in this country. So I think I have something to offer with my background.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, why don't we just start a team? How hard can it be?
Well, that's what we come to find out. So let me ask you this: let me just put it as plain as I can. How do you feel about Plan Bs?
Plan B?
Yeah. In the course of all these pivots and turns, was there any Plan Bs?
So I'm actually not a fan of Plan B or Plan C, but you also need to have it in a way. Like when you coach, you always have Plan B, Plan C, Plan D, because Plan A never works out.
Yeah?
Yeah, because there's always an opponent. And in a way, life is like that, right? You have opponents everywhere. I mean, teammates and opponents. walking down the street. So in a way, I do think you need a plan B, but I think it's more important that you have a clear sense of direction and knowing where you want to go. And I think if you have that, if you have a clear goal setting strategy or a clear goal, when you come to that intersection that you don't really know at the time if you need to go right, left, or straight, but somehow unconsciously you will make the decision that will end up closest to the goal at least. So I don't know if that's plan B or plan C or plan D, but I think you need, as long as you have kind of a clear understanding of where you want to go, I think then you can kind of find ways to get there, right? And I think you can call that, like, the strategy is, you need plan B, plan C in the strategy of how to get there, but the goal is always the same.
So when you're getting offered this MLS position, but still being in a Scandinavian country, is it that you're thinking to yourself, my goal is to get to the United States and I can't say yes to this?
No, I just didn't want to watch boring soccer every weekend.
Yeah?
Like, literally, yeah. Because the position is a scouting position, so, you know, I was like, okay, I have to watch like 10 games every weekend, and I've done this now for a decade. I'm like, not that fun.
So it was just a matter of solely, I'm not feeling this future.
Super stupid. Like, it would have been so much smarter to just take the job and done it, because it would have, I think, would have opened up some good doors.
Right.
At the same time, I can't complain because it brought me here.
Right. Okay, so tell me then how the road gets you here.
Through a friend of mine, actually. So who's our assistant coach this summer for
Awesome.
Paradise? Yeah. So I met him through coaching. Jamie Hutchison lives in Anna Maria, and I met him in, can't remember, I think Barcelona or Rotterdam or whatever, on a coaching course. Mm-hmm. We stayed in touch. He's a good dude, so we stayed in touch. And in 2018, when I got paid to travel, I came here.
Had you been to the United States prior to that?
I've been to the U.S., but never been to this area. So, given that he lived here, I crashed on his couch for a couple of weeks and just hung out, and I just fell in love with the area. So, like, yes, Florida, this part of Florida, yes, please, let's go.
So, just to mission drift a little bit here. Tell me about the other places you've been in the world and how Sarasota compared to that, and maybe why you felt that way.
I mean, I've now been to 30 countries. I keep a list.
Nice.
Malta
I've been to
was
one.
The last one. It's a good one, though.
Yeah.
And I've been to, 25 states or whatever. So I'm halfway there.
Nice.
I do want to hit everyone. No, I think for me, it was Florida was the number one choice for me when I looked at where in the U.S. initially, and for a couple of reasons. I grew up in the snow. I wanted a warm climate. Like, I'm not complaining today. It's 95 degrees.
Yeah, it's a little toasty out there.
It's toasty, but I'm like, nah, I'm good, because the other I grew up on the other side of that, where we like the high is 70 kind of thing, right? And you're freezing your behind off every winter, and it's a long winter. So I was like, yeah, number one, climate, right? So I like the climate. I actually like the hot and humid. It's funny when we started is when I told people that I wanted to start a team, and they're like, have you been here in June, July? And at that time, I had only been here in June, July. So I was like, yeah, I'm good. So for climate, one part, also like the value-based, like more political landscape kind of thing, seeing where that was going. Definitely wanted to be look at Florida, and it's a good spot to be, business friendly, and people are nice. So those were the key reasons, and also time difference. From Scandinavia, it's only 6 hours, a little bit shorter flights. If you're on the West Coast, it's
you're a whole
9
day,
hours.
basically.
I mean, obviously you don't want to be on that West Coast, but
right.
If you're there, it's 9 hours time difference, and it's an 11 to 12 hour flight if you want to go back to Sweden. Like here, it's a 9 hour flight, and it's 6 hours time difference. So that's why I kind of looked at Florida from the start.
And did you feel like this was a particularly good place to start a soccer team, or this was a particularly good place and we're starting a soccer team here?
I think that's more it. I've rationalized it afterwards, as we often do in our decision making, right? We get a feeling for something and then we rationalize why we made this decision.
Right.
And then the rationalization is usually just bullshit.
Right.
But hey, it's at least a good story. No, I mean, literally looked at the map, right? So, I mean, obviously I fell in love with the area because of, being here. Mm-hmm. But then, thinking a little bit more logical, okay, let's look at the map. Where are there professional teams in the state? And the West Coast is kind of bare. Like you have the Rowdies and then nothing, right?
And where are they based?
In Tampa. Or in St. Pete.
Okay.
So let's go somewhere on the West Coast. That's what I want. I don't want to be on the East Coast. Too busy.
Right.
So that was kind of the initial thinking, and then we actually looked at all the different markets. Looked at Naples, looked at Fort Myers, looked at Sarasota, but always gravitated towards Sarasota. That was more emotion, I think, than statistics.
Right.
But as it turns out, I think it was a very good decision, because when you look at, like, if you look at census data and stuff from like 2018 or before, it makes no sense. But when you look at, like, in terms of population, pretty old population, not that many people, but like the last 5-6 years, it's exploded.
You ain't kidding there.
And the people who are moving here are younger people,
right?
Younger families, especially, is moving in. So I think we kind of hit a little bit lucky, right? Kind of seeing the trend a little bit and seeing where, I remember driving around here and I was seeing how much at 2019 was being built. Lake Orange, all the way on the east side of I-75. I'm like, wait a minute, who's going to move in here?
Right.
It's younger families. that's who's gonna move in here. So, and that is the demo for a soccer team. And also, I think for this city, I think it's such a wonderful city, like arts, culture, music. We have all the stuff, but there's one thing missing, right? There's one thing, something that can unite the community like nothing else, and that is professional sports, right? You have the spring ball training, but that's not our teams.
Right.
And they come in here for a month, or two, and they hang out, which is awesome. That's cool. But it's not ours.
Yeah, and it's also during peak tourist season, too, so it's not a lot of necessarily Sarasota, Florida people who are going to those games even.
And, I think baseball's kind of boring. But, no offense to baseball people, I just don't get it. Like, Swedish people don't get baseball.
Probably fair.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have it. Literally, we don't have it. There's some softball, I think. But I actually know a softball player in Sweden. But that's it. So I think, this community actually needs a professional full year-round team. We're obviously not it yet. But that's been the aspiration since this whole project started, that one day we will be a professional team, and we will be, playing from March through October, and providing our community with, this sense of pride and unity that only a professional sports team can do, right? And I think for people who are moving here, like, if you want to get into the community, it's kind of difficult, right? But if you have a sports team, well, if we want to feel like we're part of this community, why don't we just go to that game? Why don't we get a scarf, raise to the sky, and say, hey, we are Paradise, right?
Yeah.
So that's my vision for this. And also create a new reason for people to come to Sarasota. So
take me back to when are you pre or post COVID when you decide you're going to push the go button on this idea?
Pre.
Okay, so then I'm going to mission drift again. Talk to me a little bit about what COVID does to you, because obviously you didn't see it coming, and you're starting with a clear goal in mind. So talk to me about what square one looks like. You've got your goal, you're making your plans, and then the immediate curveballs that come in.
I have square one pre-COVID and post-COVID.
Okay. Double square one. That's what COVID did for you.
Yeah, well, literally, because I had a business partner from Tampa at the time, and we had investors ready to go, and COVID hits, and everything's gone. My business partner at the time had to go back and save his company. The investors disappear because of it's a year,
uncertainty.
you can't do anything.
Right.
So I'm sitting in 2020, I'm sitting in the Swedish woods in the mountains, staring out over snow and trees. And I'm like, screw this. I want to go to Florida. So I kind of rebooted the project, started, sending this prospectus out to people I knew. And then by happenstance, 2 people sent it to the same guy. This guy's on the board of a English soccer team. Mm-hmm. And he's like, hey, this is interesting because I used to live in this area. Like a little bit. I like it. But we have a guy who's part of the ownership group here that you should talk to. And that guy is now one of my best friends.
Nice.
So we started this together. He helped me fund it, and got it to this point where we're now.
So how do you go from sitting in the woods to Sweden to now you're back here for a second square one and it becomes a real thing? He helps you out, and how do you get here? How do you be? I mean, it seems far fetched.
I mean, it's when you think about it, it's kind of crazy. So it was a long process. We knew that we want to start a professional team. We tried to get something off the ground here already I came here in 21 to kind of make sure, okay, this is the spot. Mm-hmm. So after kind of restrictions loosened up a little bit in the fall of 21, I had to spend 2 weeks in Mexico to get in.
God.
Yeah, I sat in Cancun for 2 weeks and stared out of the ocean, which was okay, I guess.
From the woods to the ocean.
I'm not complaining.
No.
And came in here to kind of make sure that this is a spot. Mm-hmm. Started talking to people, blah, blah, blah. It ended up being, we ended up putting a proposal in to see if we can kind of build a temporary stadium and like get a pro team off the ground. Kind of difficult, there's not a lot of land here.
No.
And it's so cheap.
Yeah, right. They're giving it away.
Yeah. So anyway, we tried to go in the government route kind of thing, and they just looked at us and they're like, yeah, okay, wait a minute, this is a Swedish tourist, and my business partner he lives in Texas, so who are you guys, kind of thing.
Right.
Which is understandable. I get it.
Yeah.
So then, okay, let's start a pre-professional team. So we kind of put the stake in the ground, put my boots on the ground here to kind of show people that we are for real. Because one thing that I notice here, and now I notice it from a different position, mm-hmm. but I notice there's a lot of people walking around talking about doing stuff, and they're reaching into people's checkbooks. They want to have some piece of the pie. So I recognize that, and I understand why people are guarded, for sure. Because there's a lot of that going on, and I'm like, okay, I get it. So I'm not gonna walk around here and talk about these things. Let's do it first. Let's show that this is actually for real. Show people that this is gonna happen, and build something first, right? Don't go around talking about it. Just go and do it. And that's kind of how I am. I don't want to talk about it too much. I just want to do it and show you. And then I hope you come and join me, of course, because we kind of need that.
Yeah, right.
So that became the strategy, and we looked at different things to do, kind of in sports together. But when this kind of when we got the go ahead from Sarasota High that we could play there in the USL League 2, we're like, okay, let me move in there, let me get to Sarasota, be on the ground. Let's start this, and then start the process of building this towards a pro team.
So what's step one then? You're just doing like exhibition games? You're just trying to show yourself to the community?
No, we joined the pre-professional league. So, which means it's kind of players are not paid, so it's kind of amateur. Mm-hmm. Or it's collegiate players mostly. So majority of our players are college players. Mm-hmm. And then no one's really paid. We have some part-time staff, etc. So it's a semi-pro operation, mm-hmm. and it's only a summer league. So we play from now mid-May through July. So it's a lot of money, but it's not that much money. It's not a professional team scale, right? So smaller scale to kind of just kind of show that, okay, this is something that's going to happen. This is for real. So here, and this is a team that it's grown from nothing, right? Because there was nothing here. We started Last year we had 540 people on average at the games. We had over 1,000 people at the last game, which is insane. And so it's growing, and we have more season tickets sold this year than last year. So, if we can keep that momentum, grow it, and then we can make the step into the professional league, I think then that's a proper team, right? Because it's actually spawned from the community. So it's a team that's for the community and it's by the community, right?
Right.
And that's kind of the whole idea. Like, the reason why I do this is to see the joy in the people's eyes when they are at the games, the passion. I still remember one of the games last year when we turned the game around, and I came out there. It was a couple of minutes left, and people just shouting at the ref and going. I'm like, this is pretty cool. This is the first or second home game or whatever. I'm like, this is pretty cool. People are really excited about this. I love it. Right, that passion.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that it exists in. It's an American sports culture thing.
Right.
Which is very underestimated, I think. But I was just amazed. Okay, this is why we do this. This is why I do this. This is why I spent 4 years and all my money doing this, right? So if we can now build this, continue building it, providing our community with, an exciting experience, but also something that gives back to the community, right? So that this year we want to have a nonprofit every game that we kind of bring in and help promote their cause, help. Hopefully we can help them raise some funds or whatever. But that's our way of helping other people help, right? We want to help the community. Because for me, a team is here to bring the community together and make it better. And how can we do that? Well, any way we can, right?
So you see it as a symbiotic thing where the community grows the team grows the community.
100%. And it's and that's but I think that's my background. That's where I grew up with. Mm-hmm. The team is the community, right? And there's one club, one team in the town, right, or the part of the city, right? And it's always okay, well, when we play the other town, that's the biggest game of the year, right?
Right.
So when we hopefully play Naples or the Tampa Bay Rowdies, right, that's going to be the biggest game of the year,
right?
So that's what we're looking forward to, and that's what we want to create. And it's creating that sense of unity, I think, within the community, mm-hmm. and that's what that does, And it's get a little bit back to the whole. I mean, we're in today's society, we're very tribal online, but let's get back to tribalism offline in terms of taking care of our community.
Right. Yeah, and it's a unique thing around here too. You kind of touched on it that we don't have really an athletics presence here that does that.
No.
And a little self-disclosure, I grew up in Wisconsin, so I'm a Packers fan. And if I don't say I'm a Packers fan, they don't let me back in the state. So I'm well used to what you're talking about, and there is definitely a void of that here. I think that's really cool that you can see that absence and make a meaningful effort to bring it into reality.
Yeah, and I also think that there's a link, at least for me, it's a clear link between art, culture, and sports. And, there's a reason why soccer is called the beautiful game, right? Because it is like watching a good theater or a good piece of art on the wall. It's very similar, I think. And art is, I guess beauty is always in the eyes of the beholder. But
true.
When you come to understand the game and the intricacies of the game, I think you will end up seeing it as art as well. And I think that's why it's a good fit, because this community is such a strong arts and culture community. But if we add a layer of the sports layer, we kind of create more depth, right? And I think that's what we need.
Yeah, agreed. So let me ask you this. As you're going along and things are getting bigger and bigger, and you've got these times where like you said, you've had to couch surf and spend all your money, do you have these crisis of faith moments, or is it just that you know the power of this from your upbringing and your experiences, and it's really just a matter of enthusiasm and optimism overrides any, oh my God, what's going to happen if thoughts?
No. Lots of those. Lots of, oh man, this is never going to work. Lots of those feelings and thoughts. And I think it's something that's pretty common, whatever type of startup you're doing, right? When you're starting something and you're starting from scratch, and you need to find money for payroll, then you need to find all the things, and oh God, what if this happens? And oh man, nothing's happening, right? So it's a roller coaster ride. I think what drives me is just that vision, like that vision of creating something that's can outlive me, right? Because it's not about me; it's about creating something for this community. So it's what do people say? They call it like a legacy play or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Like my dream is that we have in Sarasota we have a professional soccer team in its own stadium. That's my dream. Like, and if I can help make that happen for the community, I'm gonna be happy when I sail off.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
So what do you see are the particular challenges to that? I mean, the big elephant in the room is, how do you feel about promoting soccer in America where we don't call it football? I mean, you got that hurdle, number one.
Yeah, I mean, it's always funny, huh? You call football, it's the game where you use your hands
mostly.
Right. And then you call the game where you use your foot soccer. But yeah, no, it's, I mean, I'm culturally adapting, so I'm using the word soccer.
Yeah.
I mean, I think soccer's on the rise. I mean, we see that through all the metrics, attendance levels going up in the MLS, across the USL, participation rates in youth sports. You see most sports going down. Mm-hmm. Soccer is slightly going up. I think the only team sport that's going up. So I think you see the interest of soccer just going up. With Messi coming to Miami obviously helps. With the World Cup coming in 26. Like this year we have Copa America. 26 we have the World Cup for men. 27 we have the World Cup for women. 28 we have the Olympics.
Dang.
So I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on that is positive for the development of the game and the interest of the game. And I think every viable metric you look at, soccer's going up.
What do you think is attributed to that? That the barrier to entry isn't quite as high as other sports, or just that it's kind of the underdog sport here still, or?
I think it's a little bit multifaceted, and also it's a generational thing, right? So I think for youth sport, yes, I think it's a barrier to entry a little bit. There's still way too many barriers on the youth side in terms of pay to play, which there is a pay to play in basically every other country as well, but here it's a lot.
Right.
So I think that's a problem we have, or a challenge, I would say. Not a problem per se, but a challenge.
Yeah.
But you see in terms of youth sports, I think there's the drop in participation in American football because of head injuries. I think that's something that parents are very looking into. So I think they rather play soccer kind of thing instead of football. That plays into it. I think in the other thing, it's a generational thing. You see Gen Z and millennials. Mm-hmm. Soccer's the biggest sport.
You think just because they become more global-minded?
I think a little bit that, and I do think I have this theory about, I think that the tribalism kind of thing and the physical kind of connection, because it's, because Gen Zers and millennials, I mean, grew up with the kind of being digital folks, basically.
Yeah.
I think there's less of the physical tribalism there. So I think that's why soccer also, like team sports in general, but soccer specifically, because soccer is more tribal than other team sports. And then you have the older generation is baseball people.
Right.
The middle generation is football people. And then, I don't know, hockey people, they're from Wisconsin, I guess.
Yes, sir.
Or Sweden.
Yeah.
So I think you see that across the board, at least, you see millennials and Gen Zers being hugely soccer interested.
So what do you see the next couple of years then with this gain and momentum of the visibility of soccer doing for the roadmap of the Sarasota Paradise Club?
I think we will see Sarasota Paradise playing professional soccer very soon.
And just to clarify, what's the bar of professional soccer?
Good question. So in this country, we have 3 levels of professional soccer. We have the MLS, then we have the USL Championship, where the Rowdies play, and the USL League 1. Those 3 levels are professional soccer. We are USL League 2, which is technically amateur. Are
they interconnected like you would see the farm league in baseball, or are these independent things?
So it's every team is independent.
Okay.
So that's where, especially the USL, differs from the MLS or from baseball, for example, right? There is no farm system. So when we become a professional team, when that day happens, we will be our own team. There
Gotcha.
will not be, our star player will not be all of a sudden jacked up to
whatever MLS
Milwaukee,
team,
right?
Yeah.
So he will always be with us until we kind of sell his contract, basically, right?
Right.
Which is also a very different thing in soccer than in other sports. We can actually sell the contracts of players, so we can transfer players for money, which is a totally different thing.
What do you mean by that?
So in the global scene of things, one of the biggest revenue source for the top teams is the transfers of players. So basically, you had Team A wants a player from Team B, but the player from Team B, he has a contract there for 3 years. The only way to get him now is to buy him.
Oh, so you can straight out buy out a player's contract?
Yes.
Oh, so we don't have to wait for this to lapse or make some kind of trade or anything like that?
No funny rules. You just there's certain times of years you can do it during the year.
Right.
And it's very regulated. So it's by the global organization. But that is a underutilized thing in this country. Up until now, it's starting to happen now. You're starting to see players being transferred from all the professional levels to European teams, up to MLS, of course, and for 6 and 7 figures. So it's getting interesting, and that's, that was one of the gaps I saw in 2019 when this started, that this wasn't really happening yet. And this is something because obviously I come from Scandinavia, and as clubs, you kind of live off of that revenue source, and it provides a purpose for you to develop players.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Is this kind of some of the underpinnings of Oz behind the curtain in soccer? Like, this is the game for the owners. This is the game for the general managers, for want of a better way of putting it, that you can continuously develop and restructure your club at the turn of a dime?
Well, a little bit, I think. I think it's more of a I think it's more actually driven from the player perspective, because players want to play at the highest level.
Okay.
Right, and they want to be in environments where they can develop to become better, so that they can reach the next level. Now, for them to move on to the next level, the thank you for that is basically that the club that helped develop them gets some compensation, right?
Right.
So it's a win-win situation, right? So the club wins because it gets revenue that you can use to develop more players, or you can do whatever, fund operations, make sure we don't lose money, because most teams, especially on the lower divisions, lose money, right? Operational, it's a tough thing to break even.
Right.
Hopefully we can do it, but it's a tough thing. So getting that extra transfer revenue helps with that, right? So you can actually keep a sustainable operation going for over time, and you can help develop more players. Right?
That's a very interesting layer to that onion. I would wonder how other professional sports would work if they could do that. You'd see mad poaching.
Well, I mean, it doesn't really matter, right? Because if you pay for it, why not? And if I want to sell it, it's like any transaction, basically. Like if you don't want to...
But then everybody gets mad at you that you're the Yankees and you just bought all the expensive players and you just win because you bought all the players.
That happens. That happens in Europe for sure.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. In the MLS, not because at the same level, because they have a salary cap and all this stuff. So they have a kind of a merged model. But in Europe, that definitely happens.
But on the level where you're at, there is no salary cap?
There is not yet, no.
So it's only in the MLS?
Yes.
And do you see them keep? Is it a kind of the American shoe that had to be squeezed into to have that, because otherwise it runs into this capitalist wet dream type situation?
No, I mean, it's kind of ironic, isn't it, that professional sports in this country is the most socialist setup?
Right, yeah, that's where I'm going with this. You're reading me here. I'm like, this seems a little counterintuitive here.
Yeah, I know, but it's more of a, what is it called? That a tide lifts all boats, or whatever the saying is. Yep. I'm Swedish.
Yeah.
But high tide lifts all boat. Isn't that what it's called? Yeah.
Yep.
Woohoo. So I think especially the history of the MLS struggled a lot. Look back, World Cup '94 is when it started, basically. They had a lot of problems. A lot of teams failed. So I think they had to find a way to make sure that teams stabilize and that you run a business that is defendable and breaks even.
Right.
Hopefully at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a mechanism to create that. I think the USL has opted for a freer model where it's, if we want to spend everything we have, we can, kind of thing. But at the same time, everyone understands that you can't really do that either, because then if the level in the league becomes too big, you can't really, eventually that will become a negative thing.
Right.
And you kind of jack up prices for all the players, right? So I think it's a freer model in the USL, which I like, obviously, because it's more like Europe. There's no salary cap. There's a minimum salary, actually, but there's no salary cap. So at least it provides sustainable, hopefully, a sustainable living level for the players, which I think is good. But I think that's the difference between the kind of the two leagues a little bit. We can do whatever we want. They can't, but they're also, part of the big model, same as the NFL, NBA,
right,
and the NHL, etc.
So let's try to get you out of here on something kind of fun. Soccer has this weird chasm between American sports because of things like that, and just sheerly because of the nature. We don't call it what the rest of the world calls it. You're on an uptick. That seems to be well established. But if you could see one thing pouring gas on your fire here, what is the gas for this fire? I mean, in '94 they thought that we were going to be able to have the MSL or the MLS. I'm sorry, and you saw how dreadful that was for quite some time. The slog that became. What's the gasoline to make sure you don't stay in slog zone?
It's a good question. I mean, I think we see a lot of it now. I think the best way of putting gas on it is probably, and this is kind of a technical answer, but it's changing the U.S. Soccer Federation's rules around ownership. So the U.S. Soccer Federation has a rule that says that there needs to be a principal owner, an individual that needs to own a certain percentage, needs to have a certain net worth, etc. And that rule is because of that what happened, right? Because when clubs were poorly funded, well, they fail. They have who's going to foot the bill, kind of thing, right?
Gotcha.
So it comes from a good thinking spot, but I think that's kind of at this point it's now becoming a hindrance, because there's now so much interest from capital investors, private equity, etc., family offices, stuff like that wants to put money in at a bigger scale. So that is now, that rule is becoming a little bit of a hindrance. If you can kind of work around that a little bit, I think that would put fuel under the establishment of new teams. It'd become a lot easier to start new teams. Like if you can get that process, that would be, I think, a huge thing for the sport.
And what's the European or global equivalent, or what's the opposite of this? Just that anybody who's got enough money can hang out a shingle?
I mean, it's funny because in Europe you can't really start a new team. It's impossible.
Yeah?
Yeah, because every club is, well, you can in theory, and it's been done, but it's tricky. Mostly there you talk about mergers and you go together or whatever, stuff like that, or you break off from something, but you don't really start from scratch because of all the history. Right? Because every club has been around for 100 years.
Gotcha.
Right? So if you go in and start something new, people will look at you like you're an idiot. But here you can.
I was going to say, we got fertile ground here at least.
That's why I'm here. Yeah.
Well, Marcus, I can't thank you enough for taking some time to come down here and shed a little light on your journey in the Sarasota Paradise in general. I really appreciate getting hearing from you, and I can't wait to come see a game.
It'll be fun. First game, June 1st.
All right.
Looking forward to see you there, man.
Heck yeah. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.